Hello, today I am here to bring you my reviews from what I read during Booktubeathon, which ran from the 24th to the 30th of July. I kind of half-heartedly took part. I didn't overly push myself. I did film a TBR video, which I will link down below, but I didn't expect to get to those books. What actually happened was I read 4 books, so I was well off the 7 score, and I knew I would be, but I wanted to take part anyway. And the books that I've got here, 2 of them weren't on my TBR because I realised I hadn't done my monthly challenges, so I wanted to fill some of those in the books that I read. So I found alternatives that fit with the theme of both the Booktubeathon challenge and also with the challenge that I set myself monthly. So some of these weren't on my TBR, and some of the ones that were on my TBR I haven't read, but I'm very happy with what I did get done, especially considering that for a lot of the time, I mean, there was one night where I didn't get to read at all, so I'm quite happy, and I'm going to get straight into it so I'm not blathering on for ages. So the first book I read was Anita Bruckner's A Start in Life. This was very kindly sent to me a few months ago by the people at Penguin, and I read it for this because one of the challenges was to read a book in a day, so this was the one that I read in a day. And it was quite a nice start to the readathon. I really enjoy the experience of reading whole books in a day. It's not often that I just sit down and read a book, so it was quite nice to do that. This was a kind of mixed bag for me. I really enjoyed the process of reading it, and I really enjoyed the whole thing, to be honest. But the very end was a disappointment. This is about a woman called Ruth, and we meet her when she's a lecturer at university, and she's talking about how literature has ruined her life. She's a very bookish person and she's always been quite introverted. And we then go back and just basically look at her life as she was growing up and the aspects in which literature has kind of held her back in a way. There are a lot of references in here to a lot of different books, which I really enjoyed, and I also enjoyed reading about somebody who reads voraciously. I think anybody who is an avid reader will enjoy this book. But what disappointed me about it was that it very much focuses on her parents as well as her. So we see what happens in her life, but we also follow what happens to her parents, and they're quite strange people. And it follows their demise, really. But for me, the very last chapter kind of just... it was like Anita Bruckner just surged all over the page, and I felt like it was very rushed. But as a whole, I liked this book. It was just the very end that let me down. I think it could have been a lot longer. Then I read Maya Angelou's I Knew Why the Caged Bird Sings. This is an autobiography, so it fits in with my non-fiction challenge. It wasn't originally on my TBR, but it also fits in with the challenge for the readathon that was to read a book about a person who is different from you. So Maya Angelou is obviously black, and she grew up in Southern America quite a long time ago, so there was quite a lot of diversity in there. This was kind of a disappointment for me. I was expecting it to be a really standout book, and it's been on my TBR for a while, and I've been very much looking forward to getting it. It didn't have as much impact as I was expecting. It's quite a gentle book. Some really terrible things do happen to her, but for the most part it's just about the people around her and the community around her. And sort of her way of finding herself in the world is basically a coming-of-age novel. It kind of put me in mind of Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury in the sort of gentle societal atmosphere of it. And obviously Maya Angelou has an amazing ability with language, so it was very poetic and it's very well written. At times it almost reads like a fiction. But yeah, it didn't have as much oomph as I was expecting, but I think that was just literally my expectations that ruined it slightly for me. But I did enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars, so it was a good one. Then I read the best book I read all the readathon, which was Magic for Beginners by Kelly Link. This was my short story collection for the month, and it also fit in with the challenge of reading a book with a person on the cover. I have known that I will love Kelly Link for a very long time, and I did adore Kelly Link. I think she's fantastic with language. She is what I would like to be as a short story writer. She's just phenomenal. She is a very bizarre writer, and there were a few stories in here that I found I kind of felt like they could have been a lot longer. There was one called Stone Animals, which I really enjoyed, but I felt like it almost needed more to become as good as it could be. But other than that, I really enjoyed the stories in here. It's magical realism, but in a very realist way, so I think she's good for people who like their magical realism to be quite grounded in reality. That said, there are zombies and vampires, and it gets a bit strange, but it's all kind of hinted at rather than being blatantly in your face, which I liked. And I think it's the kind of collection that you can take what you want from the stories, and the writing itself is amazing, so that was enough to carry it through alone for me. But her concepts are also fantastic. I felt like she basically just completely runs with her imagination, but she doesn't alienate the audience by doing that, which I think can sometimes happen, especially in magical realism. She very much takes you along for the ride, and while you're reading these stories you're just thinking how bizarre they are, but they're so good at the same time. So I'm definitely going to be reading more Kelly Link in the future. And then I finished the readathon with The Scatter is Too Great Here by Bilal Tanweer. This was not on my TBR again, but it was my library pick for the month and I needed to get it done. I picked this up purely because of the title. I think that is a phenomenal title. This follows, it's kind of hard to explain, it's a lot of different perspectives, and it follows people in Pakistan, and it kind of follows their lives. And the sort of thing that connects all of them is that they are all involved in this bomb blast that happens, and it kind of looks at where they all were and what was going on while the bomb took place. I would say this is a book with potential, but it didn't quite live up to it for me. The writing is okay. It didn't quite live up to the title, but for me, I found that it was kind of just a book of tangents, and it was a debut, so you can very much see that. I think this is definitely an author to look out for. But for me, it just kind of, yeah, it was all tangents, and I felt like I needed more focus on why the bomb happened and more focus on the setting than the people themselves. I felt like we kind of learnt some things about the people that we didn't necessarily need to know. I also found what was confusing was that it was in sections based around one character, so we had about 3 altogether, I think. But within those sections we got different chapters from, say, we'd have a chapter from the person, then a chapter from their sister or their sister's boyfriend, but it was kind of a confusing layout. It wasn't always clear who the character that was speaking was until way into the chapter. So I found for a lot of this I was just zoning out, and I think that's a sign that a book maybe isn't hitting the spot. I don't know whether it was just my concentration, but I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm realising that if I'm failing to concentrate on a book, there's usually a reason for it. If a book is good, it's going to grip you no matter what headspace you're in. So yeah, it kind of let me down a little bit. I would still look out for Bilal Tanweer. I think he definitely has potential, and I'm glad I picked it up. It's the first time I've actually gone in the library and just picked up a book because of the title or because I thought it looked good. So that was a first for me for a while, and it was quite refreshing to do that, but it was a bit of a disappointment. So yeah, it wasn't the best end to the readathon, but I really enjoyed the process, as I always do. I think it's such a good thing to take part in, especially as my reading's not been amazing recently, so it's really good to have got a few more books under my belt this month. Let me know down below if you took part and how many books you managed to read, and I will see you next time. Bye!